Hello, everyone. Uh, Seems to be a bit fuzzy, but now we're back. Welcome, everyone. This is the 30th episode of Disruption Talks, and running the risk of sounding like a broken record. New normal, right? New normal means working from home. New normal means getting a jab just like I did today. New normal means the cryptocurrencies running the stock exchange. New normal means ransomware as a service company with a code of conduct attacking the East Coast pipeline in the US and further apologizing for the social impact that they caused. So, whatever we call normal might need a redefinition. However, in the wave of things that are the new normal comes remote work, just like I mentioned. Many companies have been prepared to be remote first. Some of them are just adapting. Some of those that even were remote first are now privy to a pool of talent that wasn't accessible to them before. But what happens when you have as many regulations as there are countries, and then the layer of companies and their regulations? To the rescue comes none the other than Deel. So today we are hosting Dan himself, the Chief Operating Officer at Deel. Dan, great to have you.
Hey man, nice to be here.
Absolutely. So, where are you calling in from?
Based in Phoenix, Arizona right now.
Okay. Okay. So since I know that, I want to jump right in. But first, starting with you personally. So, you and Deel, Chief Operating Officer, what does a day look like for you? What is it that you do, seeing that this is a, I don't want to call it a new, but definitely a fresh company?
Yeah, great question. Well, we move incredibly quickly at Deal. One of the things that we pride ourselves in is deal speed, which means we move quicker than all our competitors. We practice a highly iterative work method. And the day always starts off with me checking what problems we have to solve and selecting the highest impact one. Um, and then we'll zoom in on two, three, maybe up to five problems, and go out and solve them with priority.
Okay. So, to give our audience a little bit of a context for this conversation, I could explain what Deal is, but I couldn't do it as good as you can. So if you could just give us the executive summary, the elevator pitch, and then we can dive into what that means for the trends globally.
Yeah, Deal helps businesses hire anyone anywhere. Traditionally, if you want to hire somebody in another country, it requires a business setting up a legal presence in that country. So, for example, if I'm a UK based entity based business and I want to hire someone in Mexico, typically I would have to go to Mexico, incorporate an entity, open an office, establish some organizational functions, and then start hiring people. With Deel, we do all of that for you. So in under 5 minutes, you can use our platform to hire someone in Mexico.
Sounds very cool. And actually, when I was in Switzerland just end of March, I stumbled onto an employee of the Hayes recruitment agency, and we had a conversation concerning exactly that. How if you are a Swiss company, especially a corporation, not just a company, you are tied to hiring people within Switzerland. So this is a huge deal for, no pun intended, for the global trends and everything concerning employment. So what I also want to ask is, we've had the short personal introduction, but let's dive deeper into that. This isn't your first company that is somehow in the finance space. I want to define this correctly. Is Deal a fintech? Is it an employment tech? Is this something that can be boxed in a definition?
Yeah, I think that we marry two disparate things together, which is fintech and HR effectively. I think that there are many fintech companies that have scaled and do really great things. There are also many people-based companies or HR-based companies that have done the same. But marrying those things together in a tech-first way has not really been done before. So we're the biggest, we're the fastest moving, and we have the early mover advantage, and we provide a suite of financial tools so we can invoice businesses in a bunch of different currencies in a bunch of different financial markets. So we can take money from companies using the SEPA, single euro payment area, or in GBP, or US, Canada, and so forth. We can host and manage current contracts in around 50 different currencies. So we're able to hedge those contracts in everything from Vietnamese dong all the way through to Japanese yen, US dollars, Canadian dollars. And then we can actually deliver value to employees or contractors or entities around the world in over 100 different currencies. That's on the financial side. On the people side, we ensure that people compliance is also met. So we ensure that the relevant rules are followed, notices are served, authorizations and IDs are obtained and are indeed valid. And most importantly, that the legal agreements that are used to bind work engagements are correct.
Okay. I really love the idea of what you guys do over at Deel, because this is such an enabler. Because, of course, neither does the employer or employee really care about those things. They have to go through these things. They have to make sure that they are A-OK, down to dotting the I's and crossing the T's. But it's not something that is attractive. So the fact that you are reducing those barriers and making sure that they are not an obstacle to people getting to the places where they want to work and employers accessing the talent pools globally, personally, absolutely love it. I want to ask you a little bit concerning your past, because as we mentioned, this is a slightly fintech plus HR company. And in your past, you did work for probably the globally most recognizable fintech. Even that would be area agnostic. That would be Revolut. I want to ask, was it a shift from Revolut to Deel? Was that a difficult transition? Were those two tied, or were they just completely separate between you ending one and happening to go to the other?
I was really successful in my Revolut career. I joined the company as an analyst with no tech skills. I left as a general manager, launched Revolut in the US, and was actually looking to take a break and focus on some angel investing and advisory work, like many of my friends and ex-colleagues do. But Deel came along, and I got introduced to the founders, who are fantastic. Took a look at the company from a bird's eye perspective, and the pandemic came along, and I think that was a catalyst, and that accelerated this shift to remote work that was inevitably going to happen. That was a huge light bulb moment for me. Amazing company, amazing product, amazing market opportunity. So Alex and Sho offered me the opportunity to join Deel, and I took them up on it, and it's been fantastic.
Yeah, I that resonates with me. The fact that you wanted to take a break, but no rest for the wicked. Such an opportunity comes, and you just cannot skip it, can you? Okay, so just before we start talking about Deel, I want to pick your brain concerning this statement. Might sound a tad philosophical, but I want it to be extremely practical and also help our audience understand the importance of how big of a participant Deel is in the global change. Because as it has been said by economists, that free trade has been instrumental to the growth of globalization. So I want to take that and apply it to what you are doing here, that remote work is such a major productivity shortcut. It's such a major access shortcut that I think it can be considered an identically strong force. Would you agree? Am I being overly enthusiastic?
There's a few different things to zoom in on. So first of all, many people think that companies seek to use Deel and similar solutions for an economic employment arbitrage, or in other words, they're able to hire someone with the same skills at a lower cost. We find that's not the case. We find that people go for the best talent, and companies go for the best talent. And we've seen even in this post-pandemic world, and during the pandemic, that companies are still hiring in these major economic centers. So I have US companies based in California hiring people in London or in Tel Aviv or in Berlin. And on the flip side, I have companies based in Tel Aviv hiring people in San Francisco and New York. So the economic arbitrage isn't really a driving force. I think the driving force is finding and securing the best talent, and there shouldn't be a geographical radius, 50-mile radius around that company's headquarters or office, and we removed that. So first thing to note. Second thing to note is that there is a big economic shift, and we are accelerating economic growth in some parts of the world which were not growing as quickly. There's some really compelling and interesting stories of people being hired on Deel that are using our financial products like the Deel card, Deel Advance, Deel Crypto, and living in remote parts of third world countries. And their paycheck is powering their local economy. And these individuals are spending on the Deel branded Visa card in their local town, in their local village, and their paycheck is powering that economy, and it's bringing in new technologies. It's accelerating economic growth. It's generating taxation revenue for that local economy, and that's really interesting. And of course, this is just on a micro level. If you zoom out and think about that happening in all different parts of the world, in different scenarios, across different countries, across different regions, different cities, villages, and towns, it becomes really interesting.
Okay, that opens my eyes a bit. So let's talk business. How is Deel different from the rest of the industry? Because something tells me, might be wrong here, that it's not the first time that someone took a shot at this.
Yeah, so employer of record businesses, umbrella companies have been around for decades, if not centuries. We're actually not sure how long. If you look at the banking space, we know banks have been around for centuries. There are really clear records. We see banks that were established in the 1800s that are still around today. The employer of record umbrella company type concept is not as well documented, so we're not sure exactly how old they are, but I think it potentially is centuries. So this business model fundamentally works. There is the fundamental foundation there. So not too dissimilar from neobanking. We're taking a business that has been around for centuries and building a tech first version of it, making something that is scalable, and we can sell it across a market which is the internet, which is huge, it's borderless. So I think that if we look at where we are today in 2021, there are a number of companies which are service based and a couple of years old, perhaps decades old. They've built pretty big businesses. I don't think they've really tapped the tech first approach. They haven't tapped the TAM that we are. And as such, they're not really growth organizations. You know, if they grow 5%, 2% per year, I think they'll be pretty happy. We grow about 30% each month. You scale very quickly, and there are a number of kind of participants right now which are trying to build a tech-first approach. Fundamentally, it's very hard. And again, compared to the neobanking analogy, there are many neobanks which set up and failed, and a small number of them prevailed. You know, if I think of the well-known neobanks, I can probably count them on one hand. I think we'll see a similar story play out here for international hiring, international payroll.
Okay, and especially when you mention the compounding growth of 30% each month, it needs to be appreciated that it also is further snowballed in the effect because you are also a remote company. So it just multiplies and compounds how effective that gets. And I agree with what you said. I mean, this is going to be such a, I would even call it a generational shift, because just understanding that remote work is a necessity, that's so 2020. Deel is 2021, but I remember the first conversations because NetGuru, we are a remote first company as well. In March last year, when the stuff hit, we just had a Zoom call and agreed, okay, so everything stays business as normal. But I remember the faces and the surprises of my friends and colleagues who were like, you guys get to work remote? And all of the mindset shift that had to happen in the brains and minds of the employers to understand that this is not, I will lose the control, I don't know if I can trust them. Like, this is the only way that you can trust them, and you're not supposed to have the kind of control that you're thinking about. So you mentioned that it's not easy. You said just a second ago that it's hard, actually, what you guys are doing. What are the key challenges that you're facing?
Yeah, it's an operationally intense business. I think that we look at fintech businesses and zoom in on those, and we think about payments, card issuing, lending. That in itself is operationally intensive. You couple that with payroll and people compliance, managing legal documents, and compliance flows across 100 plus countries. It's very compliance. Very operationally intensive. The way that you manage that and deal with that is through automation and technology. That's what we're good at. That's what we are. We're technologists. So we design flows that scale. And the things that we build that work for one customer or 10 customers, and will work for millions. We'll iterate, we'll improve, we'll optimize. But ultimately, everything we're building is very scalable. So you can think of us as kind of the Amazon in our space. You know, taking the bookshop, which has been around for decades, if not centuries, and then deploying technology over the internet to build something which really scales.
Yeah, that is a good answer. I feel answered, so to say. But I have a follow-up question to that. A lot of automation. You mentioned that you're a tech first company, if anything at all. But let's say that there's a meeting at a huge recruitment or staffing company, and they have this conversation about, have you seen the news on TechCrunch about Deel just getting the 156 million funding? Maybe we should get into that space. My question to you is, what is your moat other than this amazing growth that you just mentioned, where it's just simply difficult to catch up with you guys? But what are the feature-like moats that make sure that you guys are protected as a business, that it's not that easy to replicate? And is it just one feature, or is it more about the approach of the suite of features that are available to your customers?
Yeah. So we're not doing anything new. We're wrapping things together which have been around for a long time, for many years. So I'll loop back to my original analogy, or even your example of you had a friend that has a Swiss company, perhaps a Swiss corporation. They want to hire someone in a foreign country, let's say Canada. Typically, what would happen is you would engage a lawyer in Canada. You would set up an entity in Canada. You would hire a kind of general manager or business launcher. You would then hire a head of HR. You would then maybe hire an in-house counsel. You would draft employment agreements. You would find a payroll provider. You would open a bank account, and then you would hire your people. What we've done, what Deel has done, is we've partnered with those different stakeholders and wrapped this up in a tech platform, and we do that in over 100 plus countries. So I think our moat is very deep, and I think being able to do a process which is typically taken several months and costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, we've taken that and made it possible in 5 minutes for $50 a month or $500 a month. I think that the ROI for our fee, for our service, is so high. Being able to go through a few workflow and literally in a matter of clicks and keystrokes, being able to do something which has typically cost a lot of money and taken a lot of time, is very valuable.
And I think that also what needs to be appreciated, considering your value proposition, it's not that it's just somehow synthetically up in the air, just the reduction of the hassle. That's one thing, and it might save time in general as a concept, but in practicality, what this also means is that not only are you sort of helping companies that exist already, but any company that's looking to set up their operations in a different region, instead of having to account for roadmap for a couple months, this allows for immediate expansion. It's not just what happens here and now. Okay, we want to set up that, it'll take us that time. It's also the ability to just say and have a perhaps even sometimes first mover advantage over any competitor who won't be smart enough to use Deel and will just have to add those couple months to their roadmap. So what's next in line? Recent funding, surely big, notable, unicorn valuation, major congrats. Is it market expansion, new hires, new features? As much as you can reveal, of course.
Yeah, I think before we get to that, another thing that I should mention is that I thought of this from an operator perspective and from a launch perspective, as you said. I think if companies are going to have a material focus on the market and do a material customer solicitation, they are still going to set up their own entity. And there we have a solution called Deel Payroll, which will support their own entity and their own kind of office, in-house, legal counsel, and all the rest of it model. But the thing we haven't touched upon is the kind of user experience. There are really two users of Deel. There is the company, or the management of the company, or the people coordination and people organization of the company, and then there's the worker. And unifying experience into one system of record is incredibly important. I have a friend that runs the business. He's relatively senior at a big organization. They operate in about 30 different countries, and they have over 10 payroll platforms. Just to manage those payroll platforms, they have 3 full-time people. So you have different payroll platforms. That's a big admin burden from the company. And then think about the team. Think about the people that are working, the employee. It means that each of their experiences are different per market, per country, different level of benefits, different interface. It becomes a nightmare to manage. So part of our play is consolidation into one system of record. And this leads me on nicely to what's next. Well, we've mentioned some of the fintech products that we've built. So the core infrastructure of what we have is we're able to collect money, and we're able to hedge contracts in many different currencies, and then we're able to deliver value to contractor, employee, or government agency in the case of payroll. I think that payroll is the perfect entry point for fintech. If you think of the successful neobank, particularly in the US, the ones that did really, really well captured that payroll direct deposit direct into the banking ecosystem. Well, here at Deel, we are that kind of direct deposit, right? We are at the front, we're the first touch point. And that's such an amazing platform to launch fintech products. So we've launched a Visa card. It's doing very well. Had some amazing conversions. Many more customers use it than we anticipated. It's been fantastic. We have the Deel Advance product, which helps people get access to their paycheck as they earn it. We're also looking at some stuff in the investing space, retirement space. We're looking at some more stuff in the cryptocurrency space. Ultimately, we want to serve the financial needs of our customers. Remember, a lot of our customers are in markets where financial products like those of Revolut that we mentioned don't exist, and they're really amazing financial products. And if we can build stuff even close to those, I think we'll do very well, and the customers will be very happy. That's on the kind of team side of it. If we flip back to the company side of it, well, it's all about workflow. We're about 150 people today at Deel. Probably going to be 300 pretty soon. We don't have We don't have a director of people yet. We don't have a people coordinator yet. That is all done by the management layer. Why is it done by the management layer? How is that possible? A lot of people ask me. Well, the answer is our workflows are really, really neat. So when it comes to onboarding a team member, when it comes to offboarding, adjusting a salary, vacation days, health and wellness stipends, all of this kind of stuff is all incredibly efficient. So our vision is to roll that out to all of our customers through lateral integrations. And the product of that, and the vision for us, is to make Deel an essential piece of software which sits alongside tools like Slack, Salesforce, Google Documents. And then you think, what do you need to run this company? What are my critical and essential softwares? And Deel is part of that suite, and it laterally integrates to the other essential softwares.
Okay, two questions that come to my mind is, first of all, and that's a short one, it's a yes or no. Is there a company that's too small for Deel? Or as long as I have the need to hire, say I'm the CEO, I need to hire two people, one's on this hemisphere, the other one on that one. Is that already a use case for Deel?
Yeah, we have tiny customers. We have stealth startups that have raised their pre-seed money and are trying to hire the founding team, and they use Deel exactly for that case. And then on the complete flip side of that, we have companies on New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, London Stock Exchange that use us. And we also have a bunch of special purpose companies. We have some companies that just use us as a utility. We have companies that specialize in the recruitment, vetting, and placement of talent, and they use Deel as a back-end utility, just to implement the hiring of the person. We have companies in the influencer space. We have gig economy workers. There are so many different buckets and demographics. And I think we haven't even, we're only at the tip of the iceberg. This is going to get much more exciting, much more interesting. And I'm really excited to see how it all plays out.
I'm glad to see you excited. The follow-up question is, the angle for growth was the internationality of it all, the remote arena that's global. But could I argue the case that I could also use Deel even if I'm not hiring internationally? Because it is such a convenience, such a utility, that let's say NetGuru would be a Poland-only company, which it definitely isn't. But for the sake of this scenario, let's assume it might be. Could I just implement Deel as a HR and employee management software to manage all of the things that you mentioned, like salaries, vacation days? These are things that matter regardless if you're working remote or on site.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think that. I think if you think of Deel as just helping people work from a beach, it's that's an incorrect thought. I don't think the office is dead. I'm in an office right now. It's nice to be here. I'm vaccinated, and the rules in the city where I am are pretty relaxed now because of the high vaccination rates. Question, yeah, a lot of companies are using us for that kind of domestic use case. We don't just manage vacation days. We also manage stuff like GDPR agreements. So employees and team members might be handling personal data. A data processing agreement typically can be put into an employment agreement. There can be some provisions around GDPR in there. At Deel, we have our own special purpose agreement, which can be distributed to the employee or contractor. Similarly, we have equipment usage agreement. So maybe you're going to issue your team with a brand new MacBook Pro. We have agreements which bind that, and at the end of the engagement, we make sure that the equipment is properly returned and accounted for. We're experimenting with office deployments, so actually deploying equipment for home office or for the hybrid model to people's homes. There's so much room for innovation, and given we move very quickly, we're able to capitalize on that.
Yeah, probably any minute now I will have to block my notifications, because after what you are saying, payroll, HR, even our support, after what you mentioned about issuing the devices and having them returned in a good manner, they will probably want me to ask you to stay after the call so we can discuss how we can implement some of those use cases over here. But on to the interview. Let's talk about the industry prism. We have a global outlook in this situation. With this shift that you are spearheading, are there any losers? On in my point of view, I see this as a blanket benefit, so to say. There is no losers, but perhaps I am overlooking something. Is there a taxi driver in this Uber situation, to draw this comparison of where the customer was happy because Uber was there, but the taxi drivers felt like they're getting the short end of the stick?
I think the loser is going to be there's going to be talent. I think the bar for the talent is going to get higher, because as a business, I no longer think about hiring within a 50-mile radius of Canary Wharf, or Warsaw or Krakow. I now think about hiring globally. So the talent in the local town, which might have otherwise got the position, might lose to the committed individual from another country. So that's an interesting thought.
Okay. All the developers trembling in their seats. Fear not, you probably wanted to develop yourself personally anyway. So it's good that these are such drivers that are external, not just the intrinsic motivation.
And I think if you flip that around, companies will have to get more competitive. We saw a huge movement in Silicon Valley and San Francisco of companies offering almost outrageous benefits, catered breakfast, lunch, dinner, free taxis, Uber rides to the office, all of this kind of stuff. I think that's going to change again. I think that I think a lot of companies talk about A players and B players, and most companies strive, most high growth companies, if not all, strive to hire A players. I think there's a third kind of bucket there, which is the A plus and A star. And I think that the pool of A star talent that's available to companies has now got significantly bigger. And in order to win that A star pool of talent, company benefits and company experience is going to have to catch up, and it's going to become a lot more competitive. So that kind of micro ecosystem we saw in Silicon Valley, where there was an amazing set of benefits, is now going to roll on an international level.
And come to think of it, I'm pretty sure that there are several forces at play, that it's not just that more people will have to pick up the pace and move from B to A, from A to A star. But I am definitely convinced that given the geographical constraints, there must have been a whole bunch of A star players who are simply undervalued, not recognized enough. And this shift just enables them to shine in the spotlight that they deserve. And even though it might be for different economical reasons, the shortage of talent, I think we see that across the entire spectrum. We've seen, I think on Bloomberg, JP Morgan Chase offering $40,000 signing bonuses for juniors, but even McDonald's is strapped for hiring in the US, from what I hear, also from Bloomberg. So, like I said, even though the reasoning for different levels of, let's say, of depth of professionalism that are required per industry, I think this is a global issue, becoming that talent should be more available, but also the movement of talent makes it that they get to be more capricious, I suppose, and rightfully so.
Exactly. Yeah.
So let's say that COVID wouldn't have happened, the major accelerant of it all. What else would have pushed your clients to move to remote? Would that have been a tough sell, an impossible sell, would you say?
The way I think about it is I plot businesses on a spectrum in terms of decision making speed. And at one end of the spectrum, you have the founder or founders that have raised their pre-seed money from friends and family, and are making decisions almost instantaneously. They're making decisions on the walk to their to grab their coffee. They're making decisions while they're taking a shower. They're very, very, very fast, and we always saw those people joining Deel pre-pandemic. Before pandemic, before we even knew anything about it, we already had that flow of clientele, and we had a pretty nice growing business. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have giants, you have institutions like the one you've mentioned. They're much slower to make decisions for good reason. They have much more robust risk management frameworks that have bigger organizations with more levels, and just generally speaking, they're slower and bigger to move. And then you have a lot of other players along the spectrum. What COVID did and pandemic did is it accelerated that decision-making process. And a lot of those early founders now, they're still coming to Deel and they make that decision instantly. Only now are we starting to see the big institutions come to us and use the service. And we've seen a bunch of publicly traded clients. We're going to see a whole lot more come to us because those guys are only just making that decision. So I think it was inevitably going to happen. But yeah, COVID was the catalyst that sped the whole thing up.
Okay. And open my eyes, please, if they require opening, because the key selling points for me as your client is, of course, the economic standpoint. And when I mention economic standpoint, I mean access to talent perhaps might be more affordable or might have a better what I pay, what I get ratio. The fact that we mentioned at the very beginning of this conversation, which is just buying yourself time. You don't need to have 6 months planned for setting it up. You just need 5 minutes, right? So are there other things than just the access to the much more diverse talent pool and the time savings? Is there something that it's not so obvious, but it is a serious part of the picture?
Yeah, I think other things are time zoning and language support. So now at Deel, we're 24/7. We've been 24/7 for quite some time in terms of service operations and support. So very easy to build multilingual teams, multi-time zone teams, and again, that makes us much more efficient than being strapped to the kind of 10, 12, 14-hour workday in one time zone. It means we can develop code fluidly, we can push it fluidly, we can respond to customer issues, we can keep our sales cycle moving along. Deel never sleeps. We're running the business like we're running out of time, and that keeps us on our toes and keeps us moving very quick.
So my eyes did indeed need opening. Thanks for that. So I'm curious because, of course, the economic standpoint will always be the primal factor, especially when we speak about companies. The bigger they are, the much more focus there is on a P&L. So assuming that there's a host of savings just to do with remote work, two questions. Is there an industry that you have seen adapt perfectly and one that has done a horrid job? And I don't just mean industries, and of course, I don't expect you to bash anyone too badly, but what I'm thinking about is, of course, there are some, let's say, military jobs or some banking jobs that simply require you to be on site for security reasons. You have to go through clearance. It could not have been replicated remotely. But putting those edge cases aside, have you seen some places that are yet a long way to go when it comes to remote?
I don't think of remote work in that way necessarily. I don't think the office and on-premise model is dead. I'm in the office right now. We've seen people working in security positions, working in on-prem positions, using Deel, getting paid using Deel. I think it all loops back to the problems that we solve. We're not trying to remove people from the office or from prem. That's not what we're here to do. We're here to connect talent and make that really easy. And again, just looping back to that economic point, we don't see that many clients using us as for an economic arbitrage. We certainly don't use our own services in economic arbitrage. When we think about growing the business and growing the team, we have a budget, and we might adjust compensation a little bit to be fair based on geo. But we don't say, we're only going to go after people in this market where the cost of living is lower and where that geo adjusted comp is lower. What we say is we want to fill this position. The best person will fit. And we have people from San Francisco, New York, Toronto, London. We have people from the remote part of Argentina, remote part of Uganda. I have a new hire in India. I have someone in Pakistan, someone in Malaysia, someone in Indonesia. A complete mix of economies, cultures, time zones, languages, religions. It's really amazing.
Okay, so I think that renders my follow-up question just unnecessary. It sounds like there are no irremovable obstacles to remote work. It just sounds like there's nothing that could stop you.
Look, I think remote work right now is a buzzword which a lot of people can identify with and connect with, and it resonates. But I think remote work is the new normal, and it's not a phrase that will stay. Remote work will soon morph into work, and work will be geographically dispersed. You will have some people that like the office, some people that don't, some people that are required to be on-prem, some people that are not, some people that want to work, from their childhood home in the Turkish countryside, some people that want to live near a beach, some people want to live near a mountain. It will change. I think gone are the days where we restrict people to that 30-mile, 50-mile radius of London or Berlin or Warsaw. I think those days are gone, and it's about flexibility. Interesting point. One of my high school professors told me that money gives you flexibility in life. Actually, not the only thing that gives you flexibility. Solutions like Deel give you flexibility. Solutions like Uber give you flexibility. Solutions like Revolut give you flexibility. That's what we're here to do. Give people the option and let them make their own decisions to what suits them and their lives better.
Okay. There's going to be a question I will want to ask you in private after the call. So definitely a request to stay at least for 30 seconds after this. I want to wrap it up with 3 pseudo-philosophical questions. What I mentioned at the beginning concerning the international free trade, how that was a driver for globalization, I made the simile between that and remote work and what you're doing here now. So we hear a lot about Zoom fatigue. We hear a lot about people saying, I have too much screen time. But I think, personally, challenge me on this, this is a micro perception, because we as humans, we lack the ability to take 1,000 steps back, because that's how much is needed to have the macro perspective. We live day to day, but come to think of it, we won't have less screen time in 2030. We won't have less devices surrounding us or video calls in 2040 just because we would prefer to meet someone in person. The productivity gain versus the discomfort that we're experiencing, discomfort just loses every time compared to the benefit of what I just mentioned. Would you consider this is just humans evolving? Evolution is not supposed to be comfortable. It is change. And is it just humans adapting, perhaps not to human 2.0, but somewhere transitioning there? Okay.
I don't think so. I think Zoom fatigue happens because some people, some managers, some organizations don't know how to efficiently organize themselves, and will place meetings when they're not required, and people end up with days full of meetings. And then companies start enforcing Zoom free Fridays, or no video call Fridays, or camera off Tuesdays, or whatever. If you zoom in at the root cause of the problem, it's too many meetings. It doesn't matter if it's Zoom or not. If I was meeting with the same group of people and not solving problems and getting stuff done all day, I would have in-person fatigue, in-person meeting fatigue. The problem is not is not with Zoom. The problem is with the meetings. I think to the screen point, you have to listen to your body. I don't think humans are slowly evolving into a direction which might one day result in us becoming cyborgs. I think that you have to listen to your body and look after yourself. And I don't think humans should be glued to the screen for too long. I think it's important to exercise. It's important to wind down. But the underlying problem with Zoom fatigue is probably the meetings rather than Zoom itself.
Fair point. Fair point. So these are the questions that we always ask our guests. So brace yourself. Number one is decision-making framework. What is your rule of thumb that helps you get through the day? You can frame it as something that other COOs or C-suite executives might want to hear from you. Let's say that the simplest way to call a decision-making framework is, this is cake. Is it good? Objectively, yes. Is it good for me? Objectively, not so much. So if you could share yours with us, what helps you get through the day, attack any tough decisions, or just generally a rule that helps you decide?
Yeah, number one, there's two rules that I really care about and use. And the first is, what is the problem? Someone can come to you with a proposal, which might include a decision which they're unable to make. And it's important to take a step back and think, what is the problem you're solving for? And ask the person that's presenting you with this decision opportunity to also think, what is the problem? And quite a few times they will go away, they will think about it, they will write out the problem statement, and then they will self-solve that problem and come up with their own decision. That's one. Two is, it's very easy to get lost in noise. You think of all of the decision-making nodes which are happening right now at NetGuru and at Deel and the other companies you've mentioned. There are going to be hundreds, thousands, potentially even an order of magnitude higher. So it's about picking the highest impact one. So select the highest impact one, properly define the problem, and then make the decision.
Solid framework. Now, just so we managed to squeeze in the couple questions that we got through the audience, this is going to be the last one from me. And as pretentious as it might sound, I am handing you a magic wand, remotely, of course. You get to abracadabra with that wand, and a whole generation globally of 12-year-olds is suddenly taught a skill. They are equipped with knowing how to do something or having a certain framework. What we've heard in the past is emotional intelligence, financial prudence, design systems thinking, and feel free to give us your new one or even just mention one of the ones that I just mentioned. But I want to hear you making it yours. Why do you think that that generation of 12-year-olds, 10 years in the future when they're 22-year-olds, would make a massive impact to the benefit of humanity?
I think it's communication is most important. I think we need to ensure that the next generation knows how to communicate and can communicate well and share knowledge. I think that there's so many people, and you could probably correlate this to wealth distribution. There are a segment of humans on the world, of people on the world that know a lot of things. And it's really important that is communicated and passed amongst us as a species. So I think communication is key. Being able to communicate effectively, quickly, freely. That's what I think is most important.
Solid answer. And that closes my round of questions. So let's dive into the comments. Our own Tomek asks the following question. Whole bunch of unicorns, and with the growth and the abundance of the usage of a certain term, does it still matter as a label? I'm sure it does still matter if you put it in a binary context, but Tomasz is asking from an employer branding perspective, is the unicorn card still a magnet if there are so many unicorns, or even soonicorns or decacorns or many corns that the talent pool is available to choose from?
Yeah. The unicorn isn't that meaningful to me. I think it's good for team morale, and it's a good milestone. I think financial stability is what is really important, and I think over the last couple of years we've seen companies grow to huge valuations but not being financially stable. I think that focusing on the fundamentals of running a business, of revenue, of gross margin, of EBITDA margin, of balance sheet is incredibly important. And I think that kind of got lost for a few companies, and they were just focused on growth, activation, and other kind of fashion metrics, and that blew up valuations. So I have more focus on that. That's the way I like to run the business and think about the business. And at Deel, we do a great job of displaying those KPIs and making sure everyone on the team knows the numbers and knows what our revenue is and knows what our margins are and knows what our balance sheet is. And that's really important when doing business with clients and when working towards those goals. I think that more interestingly, we're entering a new age of private companies. We've seen companies like Stripe trade privately at $100+ billion. I think that's just testament to how big these markets can be, and when the internet is used. And I think that's the new impressive milestone. $100 billion company is what many of the unicorns today are working towards, and that's what we at Deel are working towards.
Okay. I'm not even crossing my fingers because you guys will get there surely. Another question. It seems, at least in the streaming platform, that it's an anonymous LinkedIn user. So the LinkedIn user asks, what are your thoughts on human cloud startups and what kind of opportunities and challenges lay ahead of them? And also, it would be good if you could convey that into the answer. Human cloud startups.
Yeah, it's somewhat ambiguous. What I'm thinking it means is kind of people as a service. So it's a combination of talent marketplaces and other technologies. So let's take a very crude example. I could head to Fiverr.com and I can find someone to design me a logo. If you reposition that differently, maybe I can head to website X and find an operations manager to run part of the business. So what are my thoughts on them? Well, I think knowledge transfer, and looping back to the communication point with 12-year-olds, I think knowledge transfer and communication is really important. I think that will be a big challenge for kind of human cloud startups in that context. Second point I'll add is I hope they do succeed, because Deel's a great backend tool for them. The Deel API will be amazing to hire that underlying person and give them the tools and the benefits they need to do their job across that human cloud platform really, really well. I think the final thing I would say is opportunities is great. You know, they're shortening that kind of sourcing, recruitment, vetting cycle. We don't touch that at Deel. We're all about hiring the person and paying the person. The recruitment, vetting, and sourcing is something completely different, and I think that there's a big opportunity there for these businesses.
Okay, so remains to be seen whether recruitment will be something that you might just dabble in the future, but let's keep that as a secret to be discovered in the foreseeable future. So, Dan, thank you so much. We're just about to hit the 55-minute mark. We've exhausted all the questions from the audience and the ones that I had. So I just wanted to invite our audience to our next episode coming up next Tuesday with Comply Advantage, when we will be talking about anti-money laundering practices and how you can implement them in your company. But coming back here, Dan, thank you so much. You've been a fantastic guest speaker. Just wondering if there's maybe any closing remarks, quotes, or anything you'd like to leave us or the audience with.
No, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, Philip. If anyone listening wants to get hit up on Deel, you know where I am, you know where the team is. We'd love to help you hire cross border.
Absolutely. Make sure to reach out to Dan on LinkedIn. Quote this interview. Hopefully, Dan will remember it as something really nice and give you a.
Absolutely, of course.
Thanks a lot, Dan. See you around. Bye-bye.
Thanks. See you. Bye.